Before I interview tonight's guest, I wanted to let you know that in a previous interview, I had come to a realization that was quite new to me. That I came to the realization that I was afraid of programming technology interviews. And part of the reason that I haven't gone off to do one in 10 years is because of that fear. But I'm a trained educator. I've got a bachelor in education, and if there's one thing that I should know how to do, it's how to learn things and how to teach things. Um, I've started a GitHub repo. I call it Coding Interview Practice. I'll rename it at some point because it's gone through a pivot. Originally, I was just deciding to practice on my own for a coding interview to see that I could get to the sort of level and shape that I need to be of that quality. And as an engineer, that I'm probably okay as a person most times, but as an engineer, and I started thinking that it would be a lot of fun if I could bring a few of my friends along and start working with them towards a goal of professional self-improvement and just learning these things that if we ever did, maybe you're super happy in the role that you're in right now, but if we ever did decide, if you ever do decide that you want to take that step into the next level, you want to be in good shape from a code interview perspective. And so in that repo that I mentioned a few moments ago, I am planning or in currently in process of building a course outline that we can follow and use it to study to get ourselves into the level of shape where we think we could pass virtually any coding interview, virtually any. Um, the guides are already out there, the timelines. It's probably going to be about a 14 or 15-week course when we're all done. I'm going to be live streaming weekly sessions at Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That'll be on Twitch and possibly on YouTube. There will be some details are still being sorted out. Um, but if you have interest in training for your next interview or just to become a better engineer, an engineer of the quality that would work at a Google or an Amazon or a Netflix, anything that would require a 10x engineer, well, why not come along to that and give it a try. Join us. You can also, I will record the videos. I'll post them up. And so if you don't want to come along to live sessions, you should be able to follow along asynchronously at your own pace. You might want to do it in 20 weeks. Who knows? You might want to do it twice. There's no cost for it. I'm going to release everything that I can under the MIT license. So you are welcome to do what you will with it. But I'm doing this for myself. And I hope in producing these materials that I'm also doing it for you. With that said, I have the incredible pleasure this evening of talking with my very good friend, Mark Ando. He tells us the story of how he kind of cruised into computers right from the start. He never found himself questioning or wondering where he was going to go. He just knew it was computers from the first time that he saw Super Mario go. Um, he talks about some really interesting experiences that he had after I left the company we were at together, where he built a system to handle hundreds of millions of web requests a day in sub 2 millisecond times. He was bidding on uh, fractional pennies of web traffic and turning a profit. So it's just an incredible story of working at scale. We also talk about how when we moved into the next place that he didn't have to worry as much about scale in terms of engineering complexity, but more scale in terms of what is the best thing we can do for the business. And so it is far more about working for enterprise, seems to be about building for the budget you have, for the timeline you have, and for the constraints of working in a much larger team and a much more cross-disciplinary team. Um, it's a wonderful chat. We talk about so many things. It goes on for uh, a good amount of time, and I just think I think this is the best one yet, and I hope you enjoy it as much as both Mark and I did. Thank you. Here we go. Here's Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
How are you doing?
I'm always great.
So right off the bat, you read the interview prep, correct?
No, what? You sent me
That's
a what
okay.
now?
I want to make sure that I remind you right off the start that it is an interview that we're posting this is a public conversation and stuff, and that we're going to ask you about your career and how you've gotten to where you are and all of that.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that you are
I'm not seeing any notice of this. You are a dirty liar.
I think I'm a dirty liar that I forgot to send it. Anyways, it's okay. You're sounding stuff. So before we start, I want to make sure we capture a YouTube clickbait thumbnail. So like, can you take your headphones off for a second, give us a smile or something, or wave, or like.
I have to take the headphones off.
Well, yeah, I want your ears out of yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah, you can put them back on now. That's good. Okay. All right.
Howdy.
That's good.
All right.
We have a thumbnail. So let's begin with where your first memory of technology is. So how old were you, and what was the first thing you really remember about computing and computers in general?
Oh, that's easy. I was at a buddy's place. Well, not a buddy, a family friend. So I was like too young to know people at that point, but they had a Nintendo, and that was like the first big thing. I don't remember I barely remember the night, but we do have like family photos of me just being completely enthralled while looking at this like magic box.
Yeah.
So
you wouldn't remember which actual game it was that you were playing on?
It was a Super Mario. It was a Super Mario / Duck Hunt combo. And no matter how badly I wanted it, I never got the light gun. But
yeah. Okay. And so you were into electronics, and so from there, too young to know people, you're probably between 5 and 10 or whatever, right? And so do you remember when you first found computers?
10.
And 10?
No, that's just, I'm old enough to know people by then.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess so.
Like less than 5, probably.
Less than 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I have a 2-year-old, and he's starting to know people by now. So so when do computers themselves start?
Oh,
so
not very early on. When I was a kid, I went to like this Japanese language school on the weekends, and I don't even know what model of computer it was. It was so long ago. It was plugged into one of those printers that like made that really irritating sound every time. It was the one with like the holes on the side that you had to rip off. So they had a computer there, and I had no idea that computers didn't run without software on a disk at that time, right? So I just assumed that once I booted it on, I'd be able to see something. So I just messed around with it a bunch. And then I kind of like, I think I tried to learn how to just like learn commands on like an ancient, I don't know, terminal. It's not even a DOS prompt, right? It's way before that. And aside from that, like, I don't know, I had computers in school, and you know, I took my first programming class before I even owned a computer myself.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, it wasn't that when I was, by the time I was, you know, like, we're talking about grade 9 when I first took my first computer course, and you know, by then everyone had it. My family was actually late out the gate. We, you know, we wouldn't invest in it just because we didn't see the value in it. But you know, that didn't
where are
really
these computer things going to go?
Essentially.
So we've made it up to grade 9 or so. You're taking your first programming courses. At what point are you already in love with it, or is this some?
Basically up the gate, I kind of knew that it was my thing. So like puzzles was always kind of the thing that I always loved doing. I always just like brain teasers and all that. So like right out the gate, like they just give us basic problems. It was a basic course, right? And so you know, I was just learning. You know, back then it was just like you only had like line go-tos and functions. I didn't even like comprehend what they were at the time. But I still loved it. So I kind of knew in grade 9 what I was going to do, and that basically since then I'd just been always pushing towards that.
And so you like in grade 9 you started programming and you said, oh man, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do this. And so everything that you were doing on that path was you started planning towards and building towards a university for computer science.
Essentially, yeah. I kind of knew right out the gate. I mean, honestly, I don't think I had any goals up until that point, and it wasn't really something that I needed to worry about. Like, it was like that thing that I had to, you know, eventually at some point down the road, I'm going to have to decide what I want to do for the rest of my life. And it was way too early for me to make that decision in grade 9, but it kind of found me. So it made life a lot easier.
And where did you go to school? Did you do anything interesting in that time before school started, or
no? What?
No.
No, like, I mean, I was, you know, I have Asian parents, school is life kind of situation. I didn't have much to worry about. In fact, you know, my biggest concerns were whether or not I got in trouble or like kept up with all my other extracurriculars, because like my parents were pretty insistent on like music lessons and you know, shit like that. So
and so let's move quickly right into university then. Was this a moment of like, what were the things that you were learning that you think were notable that somebody would find? Like, how did technology open up to you when you got into that university space?
I don't really know how to answer that. The thing is, like, my approach to everything back then was pretty much the same as it was in high school. I was always kind of like, I excelled at programming from the start, just because I guess I had that like kind of logic minded, you know, approach to everything. And I kind of use that. I kind of actually just coasted on those skills alone. That's why, like, you know, my grades in other subjects like English were always like rock bottom kind of situation. Now I still managed to, you know, do the bare minimum to like not fail and to get into the class at school that I wanted, but like at no point was I like top the class or anything. It was just, technology for me was just that thing that I knew I was going to do it. And I knew that there was lots of unknowns. So like whether or not I'm not saying I knew everything about all the courses that I took at all, right? I took, I took a recursive class that was like based in schema, and I took a database class. That was my first time really understanding, how, the nature of the relationships between tables and all that. I took a bunch of other programming classes. Some of them were just more practical in nature. I've used none of those skills almost, except for like the recursive and database stuff. That's kind of why it still sticks with me. And then but all the other classes, I'm sure I gained some kind of skill. I just don't really know. It's always been, I've just always been building my skill set since I was like grade 9 until, I don't know, today.
Right. Oh, well, yeah, it is ongoing, and here we go. Okay, so if we're there, let's move all the way straight into the first. So was there anything interesting, and did you have a thesis project or a 4th year project that was particularly interesting or challenging?
No, actually, I guess one of my major one of the only projects that I really remember is in my 3rd year, I was in a graphics course. It was just one of the optional things that you could take as part of the curriculum. And I don't really know why this particular course was in that realm, because I haven't needed graphical programming since. But like the thing is, like I got obsessed with creating this I don't even remember what the engine was, but I created this short clip. It was only like maybe a minute and a half of just Indiana Jones running down a hallway, getting shot at by arrows, and then climbing this tower, picking up this idol, and then running away from a rolling boulder. And like when I had that project, I was like obsessed. Like I spent hours on it just trying to get everything, and that was just because I was like interested in it, and I thought it was cute, and I also thought it was fun, right?
And so was that you built that in pure code as if it was like the you remember the demo scene back in the day where you would have these small executables that would like explode into huge multimedia experiences?
It wasn't really like that. It was more like it was a set trigger with like, we had what are they called, keyframes? So like you get to a certain point, then you get to the next point, then you get to the next point, and everything else in between is just like loops and shit. So it was basically what I did was, you have to record it. And like, again, I can't remember all the tech that we used way back when, because I haven't seen it since, quite frankly. But I had to record the whole thing, and then we had to translate it to like just a video format that I could send along. So it ended up just being a minute and a 90-second clip,
right?
That I sent in an email along with like my first name.
That's cool.
Yeah,
it's cool. Okay, now let's talk about the first job hunt. Did you have something right away lined up, or did you were you in an internship program or?
No. So I told you about my approach to the classes, and ultimately that also resulted in like a relatively like kind of a bit of a bad showing in terms of overall GPA. So in terms of like trying to get an actual internship, I think I fronted more than I should, just because like I faked too much, and like people picked up on that bullshit right away. So I wasn't able to get an internship in school, and then right out the gate, I wasn't even sure if I knew what I was doing in terms of trying to find a job. So like a lot of the jobs that I applied to were, minimum, so X number of years. I remember applying for a job that paid $90K, and I had like no experience out the gate. And like this is way back in the day when $90K was unheard of.
Well, I remember how much I made when we first worked together in, was it 2009?
Yeah.
And I think I was making somewhere between 55 and 60K.
Okay.
At that time. And so you definitely didn't get the 90K.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that we were working shoulder to shoulder for a year.
No, I did not get that job. That was me teaching. And like what it ended up being was that it became this huge slog where I couldn't actually find a job. I actually joined this one company, quote unquote, that like that had this whole training program for consultants that they would ship out across the country.
Okay.
And I was signed up with them for a long time, and like the tech that they showed me wasn't all that useful. One of their tutorials probably was very useful. I just didn't, I couldn't comprehend the underlying, I guess, the points that they were trying to make. So as a result, that whole experience, all it really taught me was how to take interviews a little bit better. But
Right.
ultimately, what ended up happening was at one point I was actually supposed to get shipped out to Washington, West Coast.
Okay.
And I didn't really know where. Like they didn't give me a city. Like it was just talk back then, right?
Yeah.
And then like I was kind of freaking out a little bit because I didn't really know if this is where I wanted my life going.
Yeah.
And around that time, I actually got my first contract job. So that was actually what kind of got me through the door.
Yeah.
I got this contract job with this one guy. His name was John Marcella, and he gave me my first job, and he was like, okay, but I really need you to be a part-time developer because I'm not taking someone on full time. And then he was the one who was like, okay, you should set up your own business. And that's kind of how I got into the contracting thing. So before we started working together, I was actually a contractor, right? And that was like a lot of the
Right.
I'd been doing that for like 3 years, and I was doing okay. I was making enough to like get by.
Yeah.
But
so if I think about this, it must have been between 2007 and 2008 when this was going on then, right?
Essentially.
Yeah. And so I just think if you were a computer science grad working in Washington in 2008, you would have been scooped up by Amazon in no time, and you would have all of these bundles of stock options sitting on it.
Okay, so I don't appreciate where this is going. Like the realization isn't necessary. Plus, the thing was, as a consultant, that was only stop one of stop 100, right?
Yeah.
So it's not just, that's exactly where my path would have gone. It's a little upsetting now that I'm thinking about like possibilities.
Oh, well, let me tell you the story of if I had bought Bitcoin when a guy who said, there's this story of a guy who gave 10,000 Bitcoin for a couple of pizzas. So there's plenty of things that could have gone other ways. I don't, it's funny, but it's not.
Yeah. It's not funny.
Not all that funny. Okay. So your contract, I should warn that in terms of like, because this is on the internet, we probably shouldn't name any more specific names. You said that other guy's name, and I'm probably going to bleep it out. But,
okay, sure.
But
I mean, he and I actually still have an okay relationship. It was only like 4 years ago when I actually like invited him out to lunch, and I was just like, listen, I thank you for a lot of the stuff that you did and a lot of the
good.
the tutelage that I got from you. So I did have, I mean, it's true that I haven't really talked to him since, but yeah, I guess if you want to like, at least bleep out.
I can leave that in. It's just, I mean, because we're about to talk about, at some point, we're about to talk about another type of place we were
I know
working at.
Yeah, so it's fine. I'll be mindful of the name dropping moving forward.
So I mean, but this is really interesting. So you were before you got into a full-time role, you were doing sort of hourly freelance programmer stuff.
Correct.
And how long did that go on for?
About 3 years, maybe 2.5. It was an interesting time. I guess I was glad that, like, I think my biggest concern was whether or not I was getting paid in experience more than anything else. So through the contracting gig, I got my first, it was primarily for Java for another company that will remain nameless. And then I got a PHP job out of that, and I got, there was a lot of there was some SQL experience as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually kind of helped that I was just I guess I was learning a bit more about how to at least operate independently, because
Yeah.
I think I learned a lot of lessons back then. And a lot of
Yeah.
that was lessons that I learned from the guy I was working with. He had a lot of hints about how to operate, your own kind of consultancy, and like what to do, even as far as like, pricing and pay schedules concerned.
Yeah.
Because this was
And
all
so,
beyond me back then.
yeah, but of course, right, because you're fresh out of school.
Yeah.
Nobody tells you how to run a consultancy right off the bat.
Exactly.
So except for this guy John, who sort of gave you your start. What are some of the lessons that he taught you then that somebody watching this would really like? What are the highlights of things that they would really be interested in knowing if they were going to start today doing what you did?
I mean, he was mostly, I think a lot of what I attribute to him is just like more business sense, not so much programming, because we didn't really work on that many projects side by side. It was more of he had one project that he needed me to work on, or he had maintenance tasks that he needed me to do. So it wasn't, I'd say I learned a lot more about just how to keep myself afloat than anything else. If we're talking about that, one of the things is, make sure you don't get all your money on the last day when you're supposed to deliver, just because some people are just going to screw you over, and you can't really get around that. He gave me an interesting pay schedule where he was like, you should probably try to, push for a third up front, a third at a beta, and then the final third on delivery, right? Because even if you run out, you've already covered your costs, plus you've, you're not losing out on as much if they decide to be a jerk.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing that somebody who's launching a consultancy fresh out of university would want to know. Is get as much of the money as you can up front.
You're going to get screwed over. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone perfectly chooses all of their clients, especially when you're fresh out and you're willing to take the more risky ones that are just like, hey, I need some guy to do this.
Yeah. Okay. And what did you learn about pricing your time at that time?
Not as much. So I probably should have learned to price myself a little bit more aggressively. It's not so much about how much you're worth per hours. It's how much you're worth per hour since the last time you had a job. So you have to cover the cost of everything in between. You have to make sure that you're, contractors to this day shouldn't be paying what they're worth per hour. They should be, arguing for 4 to 5 times as much. I mean, I would say that for someone who has a lot of experience. If you're fresh out the gate, maybe not that aggressive, but
maybe you don't go 4 or 5, but maybe you go at least 2.
Yeah.
Because you don't know when the next job is going to be.
Yeah.
And okay. And I remember once asking you, because you were telling me the hour, I think you must have told me the hourly rate that you were getting as a contractor. And I remember asking you, why in the world, because we were at the time working side by side at this place. I said, why in the world would you move to full-time if you're getting that much? So why don't you talk about what are some of the things that made you go, because you took a pay cut, if I recall.
Oh, no, I don't think I was getting a pay cut. I was so per hourly, depending on the project. The per hour basis that I gave to my mentor was actually very reasonable, and that was just because I was like very grateful to actually have something to work on. And then certain projects I had, would give me, I'd have a more aggressive, something in the range of 2 times, but those were few and far between. So in response to your question, it kind of ties into how much I was getting paid at the time. So I remember during like my first interview with that first company.
One
of the questions that I was asked was why, if I was doing so well, because I actually had like a lot of projects under my belt by that point. Like I was name dropping the hell out of some places. Like I had a project that was with Sesame Street, and you better believe that I threw it out there. Now it was such a minor thing that was just like it was like this really crappy side application for one of their 200 shows, right? And it's built for kids, and it was just like this little media viewer where they could like record the video and then post it. And like there were only like 5 different options. So that with 1,000 kids, you're getting 200 duplicates, right? But it didn't matter. I name dropped the hell out of that project, right? Including some other things. And so it was asked, if I was doing so well, why would I want to move on? And I think, well, the first one I gave was because I don't know how to sell myself, which is still true to this day. And basically I'm not working 9 to 5 every day, or even 9 to 9 off and on, right? I'm not selling myself, and I'm not getting the number of contracts that I would need to even make myself profitable at that point, like, or just comfortably profitable. And the second reason that I gave was because I don't remember exactly what I said, which was I've met more people today than I have in the last 6 months, right? I'm working out of this basement. I'm lonely as hell, and I'm having fits of like not actual depression, but I'm sad. And I can't just, I'm looking at my life. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't leave the house today. What the hell? Or this week. This doesn't make any sense. I should be in my prime of life. I'm not. And I need to make a change. And at this point, I actually did have another job that was going to take up 2 to 3 days a week, based out of like I think it was Newmarket. And I went to visit. It was these 2 guys who were running their own little service up there, and they showed me. And I showed up, and they had me sign this NDA for like this platform that was honestly just kind of basic. So I don't know what the NDA was for, but ultimately I signed it, and they were showing me their application, and then they showed me the room where I would be working in. And basically it was this closet with like a giant server sitting right behind where I was sitting. I was just like, I'm not spending three days, 8 hours a day in this room. And like basically it was a race between when those guys sent me the agreement for the hourly rate that I rated them, and our first job together, sending me an offer. Because like as soon as I got that offer, I was just like, forget those other guys. Hasta was
That's funny. So like, if you remember the episodes of The Office where Ryan was working in a closet surrounded by fax machines and printers and things, sort of. That's the vision of that career path. I thought
that's actually very similar, but like the problem was that my coworkers were 2 fairly old men. Like they were 50s plus maybe. And it was just these 2 guys, and I was just like, oh my God, even the office Christmas parties are gonna suck.
And it was in Newmarket, which for anybody who doesn't know the geography of Toronto, it's like
out there. And I was living in Oakville, so it was an hour commute.
It was an hour commute
in the morning.
They're a very, relatively remote compared to what you did come to, which was in the heart of downtown, right in the entertainment district. So a young guy surrounded by nightclubs, and the office was probably 20 to 40 people.
When we first joined, it was 40 people.
It was 40 people. And they were all young and hip and cool. And okay, the other thing about name dropping on your resume is I'm doing that right now because I have a commit in the Kubernetes repo.
Oh, really? Nice.
And it's like 1 or 2 lines of documentation because I as soon as I learned about Kubernetes for the first time, I thought, this is the coolest thing I could ever touch in my entire life.
Right.
And so I like ran home. And I start checking out the Kubernetes repo, and I'm working in virtual machine. I set up virtual machine on Oracle virtual machine or whatever on my desktop, and I'm running like a little Kubernetes thing, and I'm working step by step through the how to get started guide, and one of the steps is broken. So I say, oh, well, I'll just update that in GitHub and I'll send that along. And because it would save the next developer after me who's trying to start their journey with Kubernetes for the first time. It would save them like 2 days of Googling, because this was weekend work.
Right.
And, so I pushed that along. And now, like, for the rest of time, this is like NFTs for like computer nerds. And for the rest of time, my name is attached to the Kubernetes repo. So I've got this line in my resume that says Kubernetes repo, and I can link directly to it, and they can see my name. Now, you can't be like too stupid to go, oh wait, he updated like a click here. So like, right. It was just it was a key piece of information, but it was just like this one little line. I name dropped the hell out of that, man. Like, you're a Sesame Street programmer extraordinaire, and I am, I'm a contributor on the Kubernetes project. So
I don't think
let's see. So we're in about 2008, 2009,
yeah.
And I think I'm already there. I don't know if you.
We got hired in the same stream of hiring.
Okay, so we showed up within a couple of weeks of each other.
This was about September 2009, and we started on the same day, you and I. So
really?
You and I and Alex all walked to there was that one Mac store on College in Spadina, and we all picked up our computers the day of, because they hadn't ordered them yet.
That's pretty fun. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't remember that. That's pretty cool.
It was three of us. Maybe you weren't there, because we had a lot of people starting the same day, but we were in the same pod because we were all hired at roughly the same time, and
the same time.
Alex was there as well. So yeah.
Yeah. I thought he joined a little after us, but anyways.
Really?
So what kinds of things were we doing at that time, and what was that like?
So by this point, I'd already had like a lot of PHP jobs. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't learn anything from that place, but honestly, like everything that I'd learned up until that point was kind of self-taught. So I was comfortable in the PHP space, but I wasn't so comfortable that I could just code circles around everyone else. That's not the case. I did learn a lot about like probably more appropriate code for a publicly facing company.
Yeah.
To the extent that it was,
Yeah, because we were. I mean, this, to my memory, was amongst some of you and I working, because we had our desks side by side.
Yeah, we did.
And we had our screens side by side, and we were working on the same code base, but we both had our own tickets at any given time.
Yeah.
And it was just so much fun to be able to just go, you'd be working on your own thing, and you'd sort of go, hey, I can't figure this out. What am I doing here? And then we would pair program for a bit, and then we would go, oh, okay, let's go back to our own thing. And then we'd pair program on mine for a bit. And
right. So regarding that, there's no question. I mean, ultimately, I'd already explained that I'm like super miserable doing the the 3 days of work that I was doing up until that point, because I didn't leave the house, and my nightmare was another contract just around the corner. I was super scared, and I wanted to be surrounded by people, and I couldn't be until that point. And so without question, it was just like it was like this incredible space where like, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm working in this place with surrounded by people, and I'm actually learning things from other people, and like I can actually talk to 4 people immediately surrounding me, and it was I don't know, it was pretty life changing, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah, it was really, I mean, for the inside of the experience, it was really great.
Yeah.
Like one other tidbit that I recall from this time for me was specifically in terms of the pair programming, was you had some problem that was an algorithm type thing. It was sort of like do a tree view where things are nested and dynamic and recursive and everything.
Right.
And I remember we were working on that, but I had started interviewing around out in the wider world.
Okay.
And I had done a few, nothing had stuck yet. And then I went into where I still am now, which was Click, and our coding interview at that time. The primary question was a tree view algorithm. And I had just solved it like 2 days before on your computer screen with you. And I was sort of like, I was walking around for a couple of, because when you solve a really cool algorithm for the first time, you kind of walk around for a couple of days thinking like, oh, that was fun. Let me like think about how it works. And I thought that was really fun because I was doing this thing on your machine. I show up untested completely in coding interviews in general. And then I sit down and it's like, oh shit, Ando did that. Ando and I did this 2 days ago. And I pop, 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 pop. And like I nailed the interview because you like elbowed me 2 days before and said, hey, can you help me figure this out? And I just think that was a really serendipitous thing that came out of us working together the first time that we had our serendipity happen. But let's talk more about some of the things like, so for you at that time, the social aspect of working in teams was really important.
At that time, always, ever since. It's sort of the thing you do, the thing you look at first. I think is my highest priority.
Yeah. And what about the subject matter of the things that we were working on at that time? Did that have, if so, for people from the outside, this was working in the affiliate marketing space where sometimes it is not the most ethical seeming. And so did any of that concern you, or? I don't think it did. Ultimately, I don't think either of us were really responsible for like the parts that you would describe as being, unethical. Yeah.
Ultimately, a lot of the work that I was doing, like basically all my work at that point was all internal software, right? It was tracking, it was click-throughs, and it was consolidating all of these affiliate marketing data points that we're getting from literally 200 different APIs, where we're supposed to be retrieving this data and like trying to give as close to real-time reporting as we could. That was so, and actually that was
it was really interesting from a data perspective. And that was part of my own problem, was it was so exciting from a data perspective, because the things we were learning at that time were, some of these marketing sites didn't have APIs. So we would have to write a web scraper that would not only log in, it would log into the site, it would use a curl request to grab the data, and we'd parse the table and sort of drop it into the database. And what was the volume of requests that do you think we were working with at that time?
I can't remember right now. I mean, the entire script, it took a half an hour to run. It connected to like quite literally 200 different API requests with like thousands upon thousands of rows per data, because ultimately we're getting every individual click through, or every individual click, really. We see the click-through rate, we see all the sub IDs that were associated with it, and then we ingest that into our system, and we try to parse the sub ID such that it falls under the right category. All the we were allowed to do like 5 different categories at that time. So, and it was just all this nonsense, and basically it was a lot, and that wasn't like, even that wasn't even the most I guess the most aggressive project in terms of actual network activity.
Yeah.
One of the projects I remember working on was basically a bidding site where you know uh, uh, one of the affiliate one of the affiliates would, or not the affiliates, I think it was like the domain owners would send a request and be like, okay, well, I have this traffic, it falls under this category, how much are you willing to give me? And
Right.
we're talking about 0.001 cents of percent of a cent, right?
Yeah.
But that accumulates over time to be multiple
Yeah.
dollars. So
that was Superman 3 right there, right?
Yeah.
When Richard Pryor takes half a penny from every paycheck and
Yeah.
like drives up in a Lamborghini the next day.
Well,
So that must, I remember, because there was a web domain, we had high volume traffic web domains
Yeah.
that had zero value
oh,
in themselves, right? And but I had left just before we started doing that. So the traffic is coming in
yeah.
on, high value, totally unqualified
Yeah.
traffic. And so this is some of the stuff that happened after I left. You're writing the managers for these high volume things. Is that
essentially what happens is someone has a property, they have traffic, and they're trying to figure out which program will net them the most dollars just to receive the traffic. So basically it's a bidding system where they send us a request and we have to respond within basically 2 milliseconds or whatever the hell it was, just then what it is that we're willing to offer. If the response if the response is too slow, they just ignore,
they move on to somebody else.
Because they don't have the the milliseconds worth of time to just wait for us. Time is money and all that nonsense.
Yeah. So this is where, and this, you wrote this system because this is the company we were at after affiliate marketing went a little sour for a bit. Things started catching up. The company we were at pivoted into buying this very high volume fire hose of traffic and selling. And you wrote this from the ground up, right?
Well, the portion that I wrote, it was all from the ground up. Basically, it kind of piggybacked off our system, because basically I made some custom things that were like, if this is new traffic under a new category, we have to store it so that we know how to bid for it in the future. I made all that integration, and but we were doing bidding before that. It's just that it wasn't very successful at that time. The actual drain of having it was operating on our basically our monolith at that point. And so it wasn't very responsive. All the endpoints that I had were, they were databases that existed in like Asia and like all around the globe, just to cut down on the actual, the response time. And so it just pulled down copies of the database, and it was all centrally managed on the monolith. And it was kind of neat. I hit a bottleneck where I couldn't figure out how to make it any faster. I'd cut it down to 2 requests, to 2 database queries, one to actually search for and then return the response if it already existed. But if it didn't, then you had to also record it. So
Yeah.
like there was a lot of requests that you had to make, and I couldn't figure out how to make it any faster. And then someone pointed out, again, like remaining nameless, one guy who was really into server tech and our actual server admin. They had this conversation about how running Nginx in front of Apache made it super quick, because Apache is really good at being preloaded with all the support software and like actually processing, but its ability to handle multiple hundreds of thousands of requests was terrible. Nginx was really great at that. So as long as Nginx served as a proxy to the Apache on the same system, it increased the actual response time by a factor of like 1,000.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
It was ridiculous. So
I vaguely remember, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the volume, the annual return on the volume of whatever this business was. Did you tell me it was something like they were doing 40 million a year on?
I don't recall ever giving exact figures, because even I didn't know what they were.
Yeah.
But I just knew what our targets were.
Right.
So I mean, we did hit them. So it was, above, however many millions of dollars, but it wasn't as high as 40.
It wasn't 40 million.
Nah.
It wasn't 40 million, but they were doing just, and so if we're thinking about so the volume of traffic that you are working with at this time is such that they are paying thousandths of a cent or hundredths of a cent per hit.
Yeah.
And their profit is, let's reduce that, like, is 4 million. 4 million probably sounds more reasonable then.
Yeah.
So if they're making $4 million, and this is unvalidated numbers, but if they're making $4 million on buying hits at a fraction of a cent, then like you're probably dealing with 400 million hits a day, 40 million to 400 million hits a day.
Probably,
yeah. In a tiny hand-rolled system of Apache, PHP, and Nginx. And you are working at that time probably in some of the, big O notation at this. I in a previous interview, I was talking to Jeff Wong, who we both know, and who we can name because he's been in an interview and he's sort of effectively consented. We discussed, don't optimize for big O unless you have to. And here's a place where you're, pardon me, you are you are doing whatever you can to minimize your speed footprint. Do you also minimize your memory footprint at that time as well and eke out some performance there? Or tell me more about.
I was trying anything really. There were certain, ultimately, I always attributed basically just SQL connections to be my biggest overhead, not knowing anything about server at the time, aside from how to actually log into them and see how it's actually doing. Originally the system, because of the nature of, it has to ingest this data, and then it has to know whether or not we've already cataloged it, or whether or not we just had to increment the catalog and just see how it's performing overall. And then we actually had to respond with the response data. I spent a lot of time trying to make that better. I didn't spend too much time on, like, if I knew what I knew now, I would think about like how to minimize the number of packages, and like just like even the level of code. I work with someone right now who was telling me that I forget what her example was. It had something to do with the instantiation of memory and whether or not you like make it.
Can you move your mic down a little?
Sure.
There we go.
Whether or not to declare it and then add, or then to add it first and then she was actually looking into that, like that level of optimization. I've never had to do anything like that,
right?
And I'm not even sure I know where to start, even if I had to. But it was still kind of interesting. I had to basically cut down on the logic and just see where I can make any optimizations I could. So
Right. Okay. Okay. That's really interesting. And maybe later we see if I can get the name of this person who's dealing at memory level stuff, and maybe she does an interview too, because sounds like she might know her stuff if you think she's cool. But anyway, that's an aside for later on. But
All right.
so I mean, I think that was really cool. And it must have been really amazing to be working on problem. Like if you think about the problems of scale,
yeah,
that's the kind of stuff that's hyper important at the big tech, right? If we're talking about the Facebooks, the Googles, the Amazons,
okay.
Because their target is the entire globe in terms of traffic. And so in this one, certainly you're running on these sort of small bones, and this was probably this was pre-cloud. This is when we were running our servers on rack space. They were virtual machines, right? Or were we running bare metal anywhere?
I don't remember what we were running at the time. Yeah, I can't recall.
Okay. I vaguely recall discussing with our server admin at the time that these were rack space machines. I don't know if they were bare metal or not, but I mean, this was definitely pre-cloud. And if you were designing something today, you would maybe look at cloud and CDN, or
right.
well, not for you can't do CDN, you can't do processing in a CDN, but I'm sure there are things you can do there. So, but you did eventually. What was it that led to you deciding to move on? Because you have.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I want the story.
It's you.
I know.
Ultimately, you know, I'd been there for a long time, and
yeah.
You know,
it was 4 or 5 years, if I recall.
4.5 by the time I left.
4.5.
And essentially, maybe it was a bit more, a bit less. I think I was like actually a couple of months shy when I left. Because I started our job together in September and then moving on to Click in August. So it was actually 1 month shy of 5 years. Okay. And essentially by that point, I was, you know, I wasn't learning anything, and the work was getting a little stale. The environment was still as great as it was, but you know, even the environment I was starting to love less and less by that point. And I wasn't quite ready to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And then there
and
you
I called you up for a beer.
Keep on, you know, accosting me for like months on end.
Yeah.
And we met at the Firkin on King. Yeah. And we were sitting downstairs and we were sitting upstairs. And you know, we just had a long chat, and like, you know, you get a couple of drinks in me and I'll agree to anything. Which is actually how I moved on to my current job. So, you know, it's just, you know, if
I'm not hiring right now, but
if people want to keep me on, just don't let me go out to a bar. I think
that's right. Yeah. It's like a hiring manager who is interested in talking to Ando should send a bottle of whiskey before the call, right? Like, okay. So yeah, we had a few beers. I had been trying for
quite a while.
Probably because again, like I just remembered our time shoulder to shoulder working on each other's problems, and I thought, the most fun I have ever had programming was working with you directly. And I'm gonna name him because he has agreed to do an episode, is Alex, the guy who you work for now.
Right.
And you know, the three of us together would just have that sort of camaraderie where we were all just bashing our heads together to try and like, let's make something really cool. Like, let's get this thing working. And I thought, man, I got to get you on board. And because the salary was better, at the new place
I'll
too.
be honest, I didn't know how to ask for money back then. I didn't know how to push my own salary.
Yeah.
And I don't even know how to like convey this. I've tried to instill in others how to ask for their salary, but I don't know how to quantify it. I don't know how to make it a successful skill that someone can just inherit.
Yeah.
You know, it was something that I had to learn over time, and it was something that I learned because I eventually became a little too big for my britches. So like basically, I you know, I think I'm hot shit right now, and
I think
you
you
know,
were at the time too.
right.
So
So, but even back then, I was just like, oh, you know, I'm worth more. I could be making more. I just don't know how to start that conversation. So, you know, having that conversation with you, having the conversations that I had with the recruiter at the time, I was like, even then, I was just like, is this number okay? And he was like, oh man, I thought you were going to ask for so much more. I was like, damn it, you know, I could have asked, but no, I didn't. And so it was. You know, it was a long thing that I had to learn slowly, because we're talking about like 4.5 years at that first job. You know, I didn't even start becoming confident about asking for pay even at my second job until you know,
until just before you left, if I recall correctly.
well, no, I think I'd asked then. I just wasn't as aggressive about it, but I hit a point where I was like, if I'm not making what I want to be making, you know, I need to start looking.
Yeah. So one of the things how have your skills improved to today? Are you still interested in knowing more about how to price yourself?
Oh no, I think I have that in the bag now.
You think you know what you're doing? Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you price yourself?
Oh.
You don't have to give the exact number, but how do you know what's going on?
Basically, I kind of take a look at like what the current market value is. You know, I said I think I'm too big for my britches, and that's 100% true. If I'm going to get an average salary, I'm going to be an average programmer. I don't think I'm an average programmer, so screw you, pay me more.
Right.
So as far as how to accurately price myself, you know, if I'm not getting a certain percentage of that, and this is true for even when I get new job offers, I will overload my current salary by a lot. Whereas
to make it worth your time talking to them.
Essentially, it'll just be like, okay, well, I'd have to be stupid not to at this point. So, and like a lot has kind of decreased over time, or like I've given numbers out in the past to various people who were asking, and it was by a lot. And I guess I'm getting less aggressive now, just because I'm actually very close to where I'm just like actually very comfortable, and you know, I'm actually very happy with you know, my current salary and all that. And
so you're not aggressively interested in improving. You know, you work with a friend that you've been close with for, I guess we're going on near 15 years with Alex, and
12.
Yeah, 12. Okay. And how do you know? So your determination of how you know what the market is, let me see if I can distill this. You wait for the recruiter to reach out to you on LinkedIn.
No, not even that.
Okay.
I'm not even interested in dollar figures at that point. So essentially, like, I still keep my eye on certain things like just Glassdoor and all this stuff.
Okay.
Like, you know, average, you know, prices that people are making. I know that I'm not working for IBM where they pay their seniors unrealistic salaries just because of their tenure. Right? So I'm not aiming for those figures, because I know that there are people who are like outside the norm. So, you know, you take the top, you know, 20, you take the bottom 20, you cut them off because they're just outliers. And then I try to get a feel for what's going on, and like what I can afford to live off of to, I guess, maintain my lifestyle. Which is glorious.
this glorious Toronto apartment, that's Toronto condominium, that's probably worth a crazy amount of money.
Well, I actually moved to Etobicoke
Oh, really?
Yeah, I moved when I after I switched. So
Okay.
I was still renting at my old apartment, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like the rent that I was getting was amazing. So I was
Yeah.
honestly, I should probably still be living there and just renting out this place. But I really want to live here. So
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
So have you I mean, so the one that I discovered the other day was levels.fyi, and that one was a really good salary pricing site.
Okay.
What do you and so the thing I thought I heard you saying was like, you wait for a recruiter to reach out, you say, sure, I'm willing to talk to you, but what about this insane number? And if they don't hang up the phone, you keep going with the conversation. But I guess that's
I think that's actually a little off the incorrect. I don't.
Yeah.
General recruiters, I don't really give the time of day unless I'm actually actively searching. Now,
Right.
The problem is that I haven't been actively searching for over 10 years.
Right.
Every time I've kind of had the hints of maybe I should move on, something's actually kind of come along, and I'm actually very blessed in that respect.
Yeah.
And I think it's almost like kismet, where I was just like, you know what?
You fall backwards into pretty good stuff.
Maybe this isn't right for me. Thank you. Yeah, I would love that.
Oh, there's somebody here right now. Yeah. So let's say, and so where do you think the market is right now? You don't tell me your salary, but
I haven't actually checked in the longest time. And
okay.
Earlier when I said that, I gave out numbers, it was to people in my circle. So like I'll still field questions from people who are trying to recruit and being like, oh, how much would it cost to take you away from here? Because I want you on this project now. And I've given out numbers in the past. Actually, some numbers I gave out were actually much higher than even what I'm getting paid now. And we're talking about years ago. So because that was where I was at in terms of my comfort level and my enjoyment level. The social aspect of the workplace is so important to me that I'll give a number as high as 40% above my current pay grade if I think if it'll take me away from somewhere where I'm really happy.
To lose my friends on a day-to-day basis, it's got to be worth more than okay. So let's talk. So that was really interesting. But let's talk about some of the work that you were doing at Click with us, and some of the things that you learned along that journey. So,
Click wasn't so. The technology that I learned at Click wasn't so relevant to the cause. Like I wouldn't say that I actually learned. I learned a lot of new technologies, right? But as far as like logic or just trying how to approach certain problems or even things of that nature, I don't think it was quite that valuable to me. I think what I actually learned the most from Click was actually like business sense.
Right.
So it was more along the lines of, okay, well, I've always been able to approach a problem and find a solution. And then at my first job, I learned how to approach a problem, find a solution, and find out what was wrong with that solution before I implement it. At Click, it was, I know how to approach a problem, but can we actually freaking do it with the time that we have left, with the budget we have left, with whatever we have left? What restrictions are they imposing on us? Some clients are like, oh no, I really need you to use this technology from 20 years ago. If that'd be cool, like, you tell them to. You'd like to tell them to go, screw themselves, but you can't.
But they're the client.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's really interesting. Instead of learning about any whiz bang new features, you learned about the modalities of working within constraints and potentially sort of like, I mean, a real nature of not just how do I solve this problem, but how do I solve this problem frugally or within the scope of just like, we have this much money to pay you, and we have to do it profitably and in time. And so it's like, here's the money, here's the amount that you've got to do it into profit. And so these are the things that you're picking up. And you were there for about 5 years.
5.5.
5.5.
Yeah.
And how many projects do you think you worked on in that time?
Well, I mean, I was on a very specific team, and my specific team worked with one client that had,
Yep.
the same group of, I guess, logos. Let's just call them logos. And,
yeah, we can call them logos.
And essentially, it wasn't. There, 20 to 30 different brands, but there were a lot of projects for all of them. But
Okay.
a lot of them were repeats, so they would come back and be like, okay, well, this has to be updated in this fashion, or we're trying to make this approach and make it a little bit more marketable.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, in terms of total projects, maybe 60 to 70.
Yeah.
I still got like, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but I got hoard out a lot, and I guess you can bleep that out.
I'm not gonna. I'll flag this one as not safe for work or something. Oh my God! I have the thumbnail.
Okay.
We can put like NSFW across your mouth.
All right. So I went on a lot of side projects while at Click, but it was for the most part I stayed within the same namespace, and it was yeah, it was an interesting time overall. Like, I did learn certain things, like I learned a bit of Swift. I learned a lot of Objective-C, just actual iOS dev.
Yeah.
And those were one-offs that I don't think I'm ever going to end up using again.
Yeah.
Just because that's not the nature of the kind of work that I like to do, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
okay, so that sounds like a good time to transition both into the nature of the work that you do like to do, which
okay,
I assume that you're on now, and what's the story of this next transition? How did we move into the place that you're at now?
So that has nothing to do with the kind of work that I like to do. I'm just going to preface it right now. So which one would you rather hear first?
Well, let's talk about the trend. Well, let's travel down the nature of the work that you like to do.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about the transition.
Okay, because I think the transition is a much more interesting story anyways.
Never mind, reverse it. We'll do transition.
Oh, all right. Okay, so fast forward to 5.5 years later, after having that conversation with you, and I was kind of I'd at this point. So you brought this up earlier, that I eventually did learn how to ask for the salary that I wanted. I did ask for a very aggressive salary raise that I thought I was worth, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And Click at the time, for whatever reason, they weren't willing to pay all of it. They were only willing to pay half, with the caveat that I could earn the other half by learning Adobe Experience Manager.
Oh God, not worth it.
Yeah, and it really bothered me that because it was an aggressive. Don't get me wrong. I to this day I still think it's an aggressive raise value, given the fact that
as a percentage, it's I believe I know somewhere around the number, but it's not an aggressive raise value compared to the market, because we validate those. But
that's true.
Internally, it was a very aggressive raise.
It was about 10%.
Yeah, about 10%.
No, I think the number I came up with 13.
13.
Yeah.
Okay.
So don't get me wrong. I thought it was super aggressive, but I did actually feel like it was what I was worth. And the other caveat to that was, I felt like the landscape was kind of changing in a sense. I was saying goodbye to more and more friendly faces. I was saying, I was showing up at certain events and just not knowing who a lot of people were, not just some people. And I was getting, the major driving force of anywhere that I'm working is the environment, and it wasn't meeting the same quality that it was when I first joined, which was fucking incredible.
So let me try and play this back.
Yeah.
You went from a 40-person company to, I think we were around 150 maybe or 200 by the time you joined.
We were at 450 by the time I joined.
450.
400.
Okay.
Let's say
400.
Yeah.
And by the time you left, had we cracked 1,000 or 1,500?
I think we might have been closer to 900, but yeah.
900. Okay, so we're
range.
so the size of the pool of people, and it was getting to the point where you don't know every single other developer on the team anymore.
Well, I mean, it'd been like that since day one. 450 people is still unmanageable. There was always someone that I didn't know. It was just that by the time that I left, it was 90% of the people that I was hanging out with were people I didn't know.
Right.
So yeah.
So the thing that you go to work for, which is the camaraderie and the family and the that had faded to such an extent that it was, it wasn't meeting your needs.
Exactly. So at that point, I decided to, pull the trigger and be like, listen, this isn't everything that everything that I'm looking for anymore. So you have to pay me to make sure I stay.
Right.
That they didn't meet that, and I was kind of stewing on that issue for a little while. So I'd already I was supposed to have my review in August, and I didn't find out until November that they weren't going to give me the raise that I wanted, which already kind of irked me a little bit. But it took a lot of time for me to process. I was just like, well, where am I at in my life? Am I actually seriously considering moving on? And I still didn't even make that decision up until the point where I got hired.
Right.
I'd actually it was a random Wednesday. Okay?
Yeah.
And random Wednesday, it was like November, remember, just shy of December. And I was just thinking there, and I was like, am I actually still happy? And this is like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning. So it's around 1 a.m. where I actually start. I entertain the idea that I'm going to start working on my resume.
Right.
So I start entertaining. I start looking at my old one. I'm like, oh my god, this looks awful. Anyways, I look up new formats, and I'm just like, okay, well, this is kind of cool, and I'm actually kind of getting into it. An hour later, I actually have an updated resume.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, I've done that. Now, if I need to take this next step forward, depending on, give myself some time to breathe, give myself some time to think. And, maybe in the new year, I'll actually consider looking. So a mutual friend who will follow the name JB.
Okay. Okay.
Anyways, he invites me out literally the next day. He's like, listen, I'm going to a bar. It's with another mutual friend, and just come out. Actually, he didn't even tell me that the mutual friend was going to be there. He was just like, listen, I'm hankering for a drink. Let's go. So this is random Thursday now. The very next day.
Do you mean our former manager?
No.
The former vice president?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, I can give a first name if you want.
Sure. Give me his first name.
Justin.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So he calls me up and he's like, listen, I need to go for a drink. Let's go. And I was like, okay, fine. Our usual spot is the Firkin on is this Fox and the Fiddle on Bremner Street. So I lived at Spadina and Bremner, and he lived across the street from me. So we would meet up there a lot. And he was just like, I need a drink. Let's go. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna see you there. And he only gave me like 10 minutes worth of notice. I showed up. And I get there, and he's actually with another mutual friend.
Yeah.
Who knows Looksy. And I didn't even know he was going to be there, but I was just like, oh, okay, fine. That's all cool. I mean, I've drank with this person before. We were having a great night, and it was like 9 o'clock. We met at 6, and around 9 or 10, he was just like, oh, Luxie's really looking for. Well, actually, sorry. I'd said that I was, I was kind of on.
You're kind of looking. It comes out. You're drinking.
I said yes. Last night I just updated my resume, and he was like, oh, Luxie's looking for looking for someone. You should really contact him. And and he really kept on pushing me. He was like, is it cool? Do you have a number? I'm gonna let him know that you're looking. And like I wasn't in that space yet. I'd given myself 2 months to like really consider and just be like review where I'm at in my life. And he's just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna contact this guy. And then he's like, okay, Alex came back and he was like, okay, what kind of figure are you looking for? I was like, so I went for a number above the original salary upgrade.
Your original asking. Yeah.
And I was just like, I'll give you that number. Because that's actually where I do see myself, but it's not. It was way too aggressive for me to realistically
ask in terms of, because that would have been, I think, because I vaguely remember you told me once, and you were asking for a 13% raise, but this one was like 20 or 25%.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
and he just snapped his fingers and he said, "Sure, come in tomorrow."
Actually, like he sent the message away, and then he said, "Okay." Yeah, he says, "Okay." I was like, "Oh, okay." And then like it was a little bit of a weird situation where I was just like, I'll play it out, see how it goes.
Yeah.
And like the next morning, I'm just like, I'm a little hungover, and I'm like, oh my god, I kind of hope that he doesn't call, because I'm not sure if I'm ready to make this decision. Alex actually calls me in the morning at like 10 a.m. I'm at work. And he's just like, oh yeah, let's do you have a text to chat? I'm like, oh fuck, I knew this was coming, and so I had to run to the hallway just to take this call. And he was on the phone with another mutual friend, and he was just like, okay, listen, we heard about this yesterday, let's do our first phone interview. I was like, fuck, all right, sure, let's do it.
Like, what's that movie, The Hangover, where they're in Vegas and they wake up and it's like you're playing The Hangover, but you get a 25% raise when you get drunk. Like, it's
so no, I mean, by this point I'm already have my like half of my raise, so it's actually less than 25%. Anyways,
sure, but
so at this point I'm just like, oh my god, this is actually happening. So like I'm actually letting it sink in that this is happening, and I have to deal with the fact that this isn't a decision that I'm going to be making 2 months from now. This is a decision I'm going to be making in about 10 minutes. And at this point, it was at some point during that Friday, so the night after the night of drinking, and I was just like,
okay, so we're 3 days or 2 days after drinking.
No, it was 1 day after drinking, 2 days after updating my resume.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay, well, you know what, the stars have kind of aligned, and I don't think I'm the one who's steering the ship anymore. I think I have to take this job. So literally everything that followed after, whether or not it was like any counter offer that I may or may not have received from Click, anything that may have happened afterwards, it was completely irrelevant. At that point, I'd already decided. I was like, I think the universe wants me to take this job. So it wasn't even something I had to consider anymore. I was like, Jesus, take the wheel. You know what you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have some water. And and at that point it was just like they called me, and they called me. They were like, okay, you still have to meet with the CEO. He needs to vet all of these like references and all that. Went in like I think it was like the following Tuesday or Monday, and I had this meeting with him. It went as far as I can tell, it went swimmingly. I mean,
because you're there.
And then they sent me like the week following that, I got I had an interview, which was more of an offer presentation. And like I would have signed on the spot because I'd already kind of made my mind by that point. I just couldn't because my phone wasn't working or something.
So I think the thing about everything that I've read about counter offers and that whole dance is the thing that made you start looking is not going to change. And so at the organization that you're at, so any counter offer, you'll still have all of the things that were frustrating you enough to the point that you wanted to start looking. And
that's true.
Is money going to cover that? And what's the best they can do? They can match. So
in this particular case, they could have matched. They didn't. They actually only offered the original raise that asked for, which I actually kind of thought was a little insulting at that point.
Yeah.
So basically what what really kind of just, there was the AEM thing, which was like a major, I guess, push at the time. It was
Yes.
technology that was,
Terrible.
yeah, I mean, it is. Well, I don't know if you want to go on this rant about how awful I think it is.
How awful it is to work on Adobe Experience Manager.
Like terrible.
I
remember
don't like it.
I remember I had to take the learning suite, and I was on their website, and I was like, okay, well, these are steps that you have to do. I followed step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it broke on step 2, and I had to look online for like an hour to find the solution to get past that. Step 3, it broke again, and I was just like, oh my God.
That was what I did for Kubernetes.
Yeah, and
right?
The thing is, like, half of my raise is dependent on this software that doesn't fucking work.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it was awful. And like I still think everyone who's still working on it thinks that it's awful, but I can't, I don't have to worry about it because I'm not there anymore.
Right.
So like the tech side of the aspect would have been awful if I was still working there. The relationship that I had there to this day, I maintain. They're wonderful people. And the thing is,
and I agree with that too. Yeah.
Even if I'd gotten a counter offer that was comparable, I would have hesitated. The reasons why I started looking are not the reasons why I left.
Right.
It's not enough to, it's just it is a big part, but like the people that I was working with, I love these people. I would love to work with them forever.
Yeah.
But I have to make the moves that are right enough for me. So, I have a triangle right now, and I only have 1 point that's, far and above everything else. The other 2 points are lacking. One's salary and one's actually general interest.
Yeah.
And when both of those are lacking, it's just
right.
So
we're saying you've got your friends up here and at the top of the triangle, the most important thing for you. And then down the side is how exciting this is for me. Yeah. And on the other side is how fairly compensated I am in the space. So, pardon me. That's a really good point to make, is like, how do you decide when it's a good time to move on to a new position, and how do you decide when to start looking? And I mean, part of the reason that I'm doing the podcast is catching up with friends like yourself, but also as a method of continuous professional development and doing these self-reflections and hoping to share and model those behaviors for anybody who does watch, and say, like, let's make sure that we all start paying attention to our careers and whether our careers are meeting our current needs. So you move into this new place then, right? So is there anything else that happens, or it's just like bing, bang, bong, you've got your 2-3 weeks notice and you show up at the new place?
I was basically on cruise control by the point where I made that decision, where I was like, okay, the universe is steering this ship. I'm just along for the ride, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And after that, it was just all my decisions were kind of made for me. I will say that during my first, I guess, month or two at this new job, I was actually a little concerned about how appropriate a transition it was for me. I wasn't getting the sense of camaraderie that maybe I got at my at Click, and so I remember kind of like we were at the Rivoli on Queen. You know what? This is just a story about me going to the bar. No, Rivoli is this great pool hall on Queen and Spadina. If people don't know, I'll shamelessly plug it. Also go to the Roxy on King. That's also a great place. And we were there, and I was there with a lot of friends from my old workplace, because I wasn't hanging out with my new crew by then, and we went there and we were just having a great time. And I remember some people were there and they're hearing about my new job. And at that point, I was very comfortable vocalizing my concerns. I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe maybe this was like the worst choice for me. And now what I didn't really appreciate at the time was that my current workplace was actually still going through growing pains at that point as well. See, I'm actually I'm employee number 26. They, when I first joined, half of the people before me were hired within the last 3 to 4 months. Right. So that the level of comfort wasn't there between anyone, quite frankly. And I was looking for something that couldn't possibly exist. People aren't going to have that level of camaraderie until they've been in the weeds together. They've been in the trenches together. They've had numerous nights where they're just like, let's, So my requirements.
And so for context, just so we know, what is their rough salary rate? Sorry, not salary, head count. What is their rough head count right now? So you were 26, they are now
we're nearing 100 now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, those fears and concerns have gone away. I've had lots of great nights with them since.
I remember seeing the photos of your poker nights and things. So you definitely, and I know that you used to shark a lot of people at poker. Weren't you you've been the big winner at all of these poker nights. That's what I recall.
Okay, I love running poker nights. I'm terrible at poker.
Okay, so the winning that you've done is the friends you've made along the way.
Essentially, yeah. So I love running the nights, but I usually drop like 60 a night, and this is like with a $20 buy, and I have to rebuy like 2 more times. And honestly, at some point, I'm going to my gut is going to upgrade to the point where it's actually a little smarter than I am. But I always follow my gut feel, and my gut is wrong a lot. So in terms of actually winning, not a lot. I've come second place a lot, but I get overly aggressive and it doesn't work out well. And anyways, not a great poker player.
So there we go. We're at the new place 2 months in, and you're saying, have I made a terrible mistake? And then on reflection, you realize that if you're joining a startup that's targeting hyper growth.
No, I didn't even give it the benefit of the doubt. I just decided to stick it through because it wasn't enough of a reason for me to leave prematurely.
Right.
Eventually I would realize in retrospect that it was growing pains. It wasn't a full 6 months after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's the work like? What's the work like at that time? And
the work is still the same. Ultimately, it's in the transport space, and this isn't a space that I thought I would be working in, but I also didn't think I'd ever be working in the medicinal space either, or the pharmaceutical space either, and that's where I was prior to that. So taking on new space isn't that big a deal. I've learned just so much. Ultimately, my job at Click, the clients being what they were, you don't always get the best opportunities to learn the newest tech. React was so far beyond me at that point that
so you're a React shop?
Oh, I'm so good at it now. You have no idea.
Nice. I'm going to have to get some lessons from you as well.
React and GOLANG.
Really?
Yeah.
So you React and Go?
Yeah. I learned both of these on the job, and I didn't try to lie about it on my resume. They were super accepting of the fact that we're not hiring people who know the stuff. We're hiring people who are capable of learning it.
Right.
So.
Okay. So you got into this new technology. What kind of problems are you trying to solve, and what are the really interesting problems that you're working with nowadays?
Essentially, this kind of goes into the whole thing about the kind of problems that I actually like to solve. So, I mean, way back at the beginning of this talk, I was talking about how I like problem solving, logic puzzles.
You like the puzzles?
Yeah. Essentially, that's what this is. So, we have, we have software that's, X number of years old, and
Yep.
I have to figure out how to, make this new thing happen, given the confines of I
The
have
legacy constraints.
Yeah, exactly. The monolith is what it is. I have to make it work with the constraints that I have in the time limit that I have with the resources that I have. And let's see where I can get.
And it's been Go the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you tell me about Go? Because now I'm C Sharp. I'm currently in love with .NET Core, but like, tell me about Go. What's it like?
I don't really. I can. It's strictly typed. It's not like a scripting language, but sometimes it kind of feels that it is. I get the same vibes from it that I did with PHP way back in the day, even though it's not. Don't get me wrong. It's still far more rigid in certain aspects, but it's actually I don't really know the best way to describe it. .NET C# was very almost had too many features where you had to you had to know a lot. You had to have history to make the most use of it.
Yeah,
you can learn GOLANG very quickly, and it's super interesting. The building blocks for almost everything are exactly the same. So it's really just about the best programming practices, and I don't know. I don't really know what to equate it to, but it's just I'm actually enjoying it a lot.
Okay. Let's see. What features of Go do you find? So we're saying it's Go is strongly typed, but it feels like a scripting language sometimes.
I wish you wouldn't focus on that. I'm just saying that like the looseness and the comfortability of having worked with it for so short a time, it just actually feels very natural. I can work with it now, no problem. I would never say it's a scripting language. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying that I get the same feel that I did when I was first learning PHP, which is that it's very easy to like to internalize and to absorb. And it comes out very fluently. And once you start learning its small little caveats, then you can actually really become an effective GOLANG developer.
So where would somebody now? So I have started one of the projects that I'm starting in addition to the podcast is I'm starting a FANG interview study group, which is like I'm planning a roughly 14-week course. I used to be a teacher, and so I'm structuring it like if I was going to attend a college course on how to pass a Google interview, what would I want that course to look like? And so I'm just sort of writing it as I'm doing it. But one of the questions that I have set out for week 0 of the course, so maybe it's a 15-week course, maybe I have to count again because it's a zero-based array now. For week 0 is choosing a language to work in for the interview and sticking with it all the way through. And one of the features or one of the decision rules that I've got to go on for the course of this learning exercise is if the target goal is to achieve an offer coming out of a big tech interview, should I focus on using a language that I know, such as that I know and know pretty well, which is C#, or should I target, because I'm doing this effort anyways, maybe I should learn GOLANG and try and learn 14 weeks, 15 weeks of Go, so that when I go into one of these interviews, I'm writing it in a thing that big tech is already using. or do I go with JavaScript, which is one that everybody kind of knows a little bit? So with all of that as the sort of foundational brick of the reason that I'm asking the question, what are your thoughts on how somebody would go about, what is the scale and scope of the challenge of trying to learn Go from scratch if you are not doing it full time on a day-to-day basis?
It's actually fairly easy to be pretty good with Go.
Yeah.
It's hard to be really great with it.
Okay.
As far as like taking yourself out of your own comfort space, I mean, if they're going to accept JavaScript and you're really great at it, just go with it.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't recommend learning anything new, because the fact of the matter is that, you know, there's still enough about GOLANG where if they throw a curveball at you and you just don't know how to handle it, then
True.
you know.
True. At least with okay.
GOLANG channels, for example, I'm still not super comfortable with. I've been working on it for 2.5 years now, and I'm still not super comfortable with it. And that's just because you know, I learn on the job, and
yeah,
you know, I absorb really quickly. But if, you know, certain technologies that we're not using,
right,
I'll fall by the wayside.
Like anything, like anything,
and
of course.
Ultimately, like I know of them and I've seen things, but I haven't applied it to the extent that I would know all the benefits of using it. Like all the benefits that I know of, regardless of what language it is, it's because I've tried to use them in the past, and they've either really succeeded or they've just failed miserably. And you know, I learned those lessons and I moved on. But you know, if I don't have those lessons in practical space, in a working space, my working space is typically my practical space. Even if there's a bit of practice in between, it's really not useful.
Yeah. So for me, who doesn't know what a channel is in reference to Go, what is your, I mean, and with the understanding that you actually have just said you don't really understand them, what are they, and what are the features of Go that make it why is everybody using Go?
So when I first applied for this job, not our mutual friend, but the other mutual friend who I'm directly reporting to sent me a few links. And to this day, I'm not entirely sure 100% all of the main benefits of GOLANG. You know, for me, it's always just that language that we're using at my new company.
The language we're using.
Yeah.
And so
if you were to ask me why it's better, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't know. That's fine. That's fine. It's, I mean, there's no grade at the end of this. There's no test. I'm just trying to figure it out. And the other thing that I'm able to do is I can go and look that up now at a later date to say, well, okay, I've got this question about Go that I want to know. So maybe I'll go find that article and read it. And that's cool. That's fine. I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything. Or I'm actually going to clip this entire interview down to this 5-second window where you just say, I don't know anything about Go.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
if you could just take all my greatest, like, you know, weaknesses and make it like a, you know, a 2-minute, you know, best of.
A 2-minute supercut of your vulnerability.
I don't know this. I don't know this. I don't know this. I certainly don't know this.
Oh my God. That would be terrible to you, but it would be so funny. It would be so funny, Mark. I'm not going to do that, but
I kind of want to see it. It'd be funny how many times I said I don't know this.
Now I have a second editing job of just Mark denigrating himself. Okay. Okay. So what other questions? So we don't know really about channels. That's okay. We do. What are your goals for the next few years? I mean, the current, you're at a Y Combinator startup. You've got probably 100 pretty good friends in this place. You're not going anywhere for a while. So what are you targeting in terms of what you're sort of just trying to do in general then?
So this is starting to sound a bit like a one-on-one.
Okay, yeah,
No,
okay.
yeah, that was just.
But like,
in all seriousness, I mean, I mentioned earlier that my biggest takeaway, my biggest priority, really is ultimately how comfortable, how much I love just being where I work.
you're at,
Yeah, whether
cruising along.
whether or not be the social aspect
Okay.
or the fun aspect of it. That's still 100% true. And the funny thing about your question is that I've had multiple managers actually tell me that their biggest frustration with me is that I like the IC role, the individual contributor role, too much.
Well, here's the thing. I have some thoughts on that.
Yeah.
And I think that ICs, individual contributors, don't get nearly there was a great article on Hacker News the other day that I still browse from time to time.
Yeah.
And it was something like, and they always use very strong opinions and things in their clickbait headlines to get the traffic, but it was, management is not a promotion for engineers. And
it's not.
It was a wonderful discussion that said, I mean, and again, this is tech bros speak with a sort of a rough language, but I mean, the central thrust of the argument was, hey, managers, get your heads out of your butts, because ICs are the ones who are building this thing. Like, who are you going to manage if we don't have a product? Like, ICs. And there was this entire, and it was a very compelling discussion, I felt, in we have to restructure our understanding in programming of what the individual contributor is. And they are easily parallel to management. And there have to be tracks where IC has the exact same sort of career progression, respect, and thing. So what? You're not ordering around 20, and managers don't do that, but what that you're not like the general leading the charge. You're doing things that are so core and fundamental to the success of the business that ICs don't get they don't get the level of respect and attention that they really deserve, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, I certainly, I'm like not your manager, and I'm kind of a little more interested in being an IC slash like, I wouldn't say a mentor. So I have what I really enjoy, as again, I was a teacher.
Yeah.
I really enjoy having a handful of newer in career developers that we can do just like you and I used to, where we'd go, let's solve this problem together, right? That's the stuff that I like, but that's not management. And I'm fine with sitting and talking to somebody and coaching them on things like, how do you price yourself? How do you ask for the raise? How do you go through this stuff? Those are the things that I enjoy. But the management, I've got to be in the mix myself. And so I really kind of empathize with where you're coming from there. But I'm not trying to be an IC, or I'm not trying to be a manager. I'm not trying to do a one-on-one.
Yeah.
So we're close enough to the end of the interview where we want to wrap up, but I want to talk about then, is there anything external to work in technology that really excites you? Is there anything?
So I wouldn't say it excites, but I do actually value the fact that, even though I'm an IC, even though I'm not really a decision maker, my opinion matters.
Yeah.
It has, I feel like it has everywhere that I've worked. So
yeah.
And maybe that's just because I'm a bit of a loudmouth and I'm a bit full of myself, and I'm just like, okay, well, this is why it's wrong. And people like kind of take my tone as being the law, even though it might not be.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that, like, I do appreciate the fact that in all of the jobs that I've had, I've been able to contribute even on the non-IC aspects of it. So even when it comes to designs where I'm just like, okay, well, you know what, it's probably a really good idea if we actually do this. And then people take that, they absorb it, and they're like, oh, you know what, that's actually a really good idea. Or I'll also be like, oh, you know what, this is probably why we can't hit this deadline. And you know, I'll list out my concerns. I'll always back up all my claims. But at the end of the day, it does get respected. And like I guess I've been blessed again with the fact that, you know, the jobs that I've had so far have been with people who would be willing to listen, you know, rather than just being like, okay, well, this is what I need to do, so screw your opinions. You know, I'm sure that exists in some places, or even in some biases, but
Actually, that brings to mind another question that I only just realized. But so I sent a referral to Alexander, the founder of your company, who has agreed to be on the podcast at a later date, so I'm okay naming him. But I sent a referral of a good friend of mine, a former boss and vice president, when he was looking to fill a pretty senior role. And he said, and he had the interview, everything went well. And then I think a couple of days later, it didn't pan out because you guys managed to hire, I think, the first or it was like the first or second engineer from Airbnb as your new CTO or something. I don't know. I don't know the exact details, but it was like you got a really big deal in terms of engineering knowledge come on board. So, and I think what's really exciting about the work that about the company that Alex has really built is being a Y Combinator startup. He has this incredible network of talent to tap for just the entire recruiting pipeline. So to my mind, you've probably got a lot of really smart and interesting, cool people that you work with, very well established and knowledgeable technologists. What are the lessons that you are learning from your peers in terms of, you know, what are some of the most impressive things that you're picking up from these really, I mean, are they really next level smart, or what? You know, I think they must be, but
basically, what I will say about, I guess, our talent pool is I actually honestly believe that we're actually next level. We actually said this about our first job together, where we couldn't believe how our CEO, our CTO, our senior leadership team managed to pool these talents together. Because even to this day, I still believe that a lot of those talents are still, you know, a cut above the average. That's actually 100% true with our current space as well. And the thing is, like, I've had, whether or not it be at my at Click or my current job, I've had, you know, my fair assortment of just, like, you know, awful interviews. The weirdest thing that I've noticed between the two places is that I had something like 20 plus interviews at Click, and I didn't sign off on any one of them. It was awful. The talent pool, I have no idea how they got to the stage of the interview where you know, I was being called in to review them, and I was just like, what is this garbage where they can't? Sorry, that's a little too aggressive, but ultimately,
I mean, we'll take a second to reframe that. That people learn all the time in this business. That you're coming in, if you're talking about writing the coding test, you're coming in blind to an algorithm that you may not have seen the day before you arrived on site.
But even in the coding test, I was trying to lead, like, I would meet with them every hour as was dictated, or even earlier than that. But every time I tried to ask a leading question, or even tried to like push them to come to a realization on their own, I was always met with blank faces.
Right.
And that doesn't actually happen. It's the weirdest thing. Maybe it's because it's a startup, or because most of recruitments come from a certain what is it?
Hiring pool.
Yeah. Lighthouse Labs is actually
Oh,
something that we
okay.
actually
Yeah.
go to a lot. But the quality of the, I guess, applicants that we receive is just a lot higher. So
Yeah.
it's not just the fact that Luxy has this robust network of people, or that he has this robust Y Combinator space to pull from. I think there's something to be said about, I guess, the attractiveness of startups and their
Yeah.
relationships with certain recruiting platforms, or
Right.
their relationships with certain like schooling. So HackerU, whoever
It's
they
Juno now, but
they're
yeah, I know the
Juno,
one.
right, right.
That's yeah.
Click had a lot of really great relations with them.
Yes.
But I don't think I ever actually got to meet with any of them when I was
Yeah.
interviewing for them, or with them.
Right.
So it's our current pool is really great, and
Yeah.
We are a Y Combinator company, but I don't think it's fair to just only attribute our talent to just that.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's a good point. It's not just Y Combinator.
Yeah.
Just the interview prior to this one was a guy, I don't know if you ever met Daniil Moldakov.
Yeah.
But he's a brain station lead instructor right now, and right. I think we spent 20 minutes talking about how much we love working with boot camp grads, because they're I agree, the boot camp grads are incredible and passionate and wonderful, and so that's a good thing. But I think, what about, are you learning new modalities in operating from, I don't know if any of them are Googlers, but of the FANG tier engineers? Do they have a secret sauce, or have they imparted any lessons to you that make you rethink the way that you do your job on a day-to-day basis?
No, not
and you
really.
can say no.
It sounds awful, but like ultimately, like I've never discounted what I could learn from anyone, really.
Sure. That's a good point for me.
And the fact of the matter is that and I've actually, not only have I said this line in a lot of my interviews, I've even repeated the fact that I've said this line to multiple interviews, just because I really believe it. And it's the fact that even some of the juniors right now can code circles around me, depending on the subject matter or whatever the technology is. And the fact is that, in the grand scheme of things, I guess I am a dinosaur. I've been in the game too long, and so I'm not learning the best. I'm not keeping up to date with the best technologies, but I am actually absorbing them from the next best generation, which is the current generation. And honest to God, that's 100% true. I use that in all of my interviews, and it seems to be a great selling point as well, because people want to know that they're learning from their juniors. And I think that's an important thing, especially for someone in a senior position, to be willing to do. Right. And just like, okay, well, I need to absorb this information, or I need to, because what I know doesn't account for shit 5 years, 2 years from now.
Right. And so by bringing in these fresh, new in career developers who come in with all the latest knowledge, we kind of feed on the lessons that they bring to us. But it's a very symbiotic relationship as well, because there are things that come from being in the job for so long that we share back. And so it really is like,
absolutely,
we really need each other. And it's just such a wonderful pairing.
I do actually feel like I try to impart that. I don't know if I succeed, But I mean, I had already mentioned that at Click, I didn't learn anything technologically significant, but it was more about the business side. I'd like to believe that I am imparting that on at least some level, trying to establish a sense of realism to all of the, this would be amazing directives that come out from our product team or whoever it is that's like, listen, we can't, we just can't do this. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Can we release flying underpants? No, we can't. So it's, okay. Well, if I'm honest, Mark, I have had, it is so much fun to talk to you. And
likewise,
it has been way too long. How are you doing? You're in your work from home space, right?
I am.
Yeah. And we know that your primary driver is human interaction.
So honestly, it's actually no secret. I've actually shared this with like literally anyone who'll listen to me. I'll tell them that, listen, this has not been a great going on 14 months now. I guess it's only around 14 months. So I think it was like near the end of February where we all got the stay-at-home order. I'm trying to make do as best I can. Our company does try to have I guess Zoom meetings and such. We're not always successful. It is what it is. It's hard to get everyone to agree with, well, they're at home, so if they want to do something else they can, and literally you can't stop that. But I do try my best to like kind of at least have a bit of time to just talk with people and like have the social aspects that I'm actually craving,
that you really need.
So much so that even I'm gonna so
you can cry. It's okay.
My CEO tried to like set me up on a friend date, and I think it might have been something a bit more than that, but I don't really know. But the fact of the matter is that apparently I seem really lonely.
Well,
it's 100% true, and I do miss, I don't love the commute, but I do miss the fact that I'm surrounded by people all the time. I do miss the fact that I'm going out all the time. Some of the things that I've actually managed to help, I guess, kind of cope with the whole situation is that, I try to get out what I can. I try to initiate like after hours sessions as much as I can. Let me pull this up for really quickly. So if I pull this up, this is my office during the summer hours, just because I need to get out. Right.
Oh, okay.
So that's my balcony. And honest to God, it actually saved me last year, just because spending that much time outside and like kind of getting a feel for, I'm not in my condo 100%.
Oh, I just realized that I released an audio version of this podcast. So can you put that back up and I will try and describe what I see?
Sure.
So anybody listening. So here we go. So what I'm looking at is a condominium balcony with what looks like an IKEA table, and there's a laptop and stuff.
It is IKEA.
It is. And it's just sort of like, it's a laptop and second computer screen on a desk overlooking, and I can see a lot of nice greenery out there. And so it looks like you're very high up. And so it looks like you've got an office in the sky on a beautiful, bright, sunny day.
It is both beautiful and it feels incredible. Just having wind at your feet while you're
fresh air blowing in your face throughout. Okay, we can take off the picture now. I feel like a podcast audience will know what we've seen. So that's certainly like, that feels really like, I feel that in my chest. Like
I need that rejuvenation, and it's true that I'm not getting it, especially during the winter hours. I don't actually know how I've managed to get along, especially because we've been on lockdown for so long. It's because,
Yes.
we can't even go. We haven't been able to go to a bar since November of last year.
Yeah.
With a brief window, a couple weeks ago, but I was busy at the time.
Yeah. So have you tried what have you tried anything like leaving an open Zoom channel throughout your workday and just letting people know that they can hop in, hop out? Or
so we've been using, what is it called? I haven't been using it myself. We've been using this water cooler type application that's a plugin of, actually no, it's its own thing. And basically you can hop in and out of rooms all the time. And I actually, sorry, I'm gonna look it up really quickly just to see if I can't figure out what it was that it was
the name
called.
of it?
Yeah, just because actually, it's called Tandem, and
Tandem.
yeah, and basically the idea is that you can just step into rooms, chat with people, do whatever, and then leave whenever you need to.
Yeah.
That one's kind of super useful. Some people use it, other people don't. It is what it is.
Yeah.
For the most part, what I've been finding the most refreshing is just making sure that you have some kind of end of day where you meet up at the time that most people just stop working and just be like, okay, listen, let's not talk
How'd you
about
do today? I like that.
let's not talk about work, but
Yeah.
let's I found out that some people are one buddy of mine told me that he went on a date the other day where he mistakenly thought that he covered like 20 miles in like space of an hour. I'm like, no, you definitely went faster than it was. Definitely longer than an hour if you went 20 miles.
Yeah.
And just random things about like how their day is going. It's actually super useful. It'll do wonders. That's all I can say.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been so fun. I think we've taken care of the content of the interview and stuff, and so I think it's a good time to wrap up. But we should have fewer than. How long have you been at the new place?
So we're going on 2 years and 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah. So we got to do this again before 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Hold on, when was the
I've
last
really
time I actually
enjoyed
met with you?
It's good. Okay. Well, oh yeah. When was the last time? It had to have been right around the time you were leaving, because
it's definitely
I absolutely wouldn't have let you go without saying, "Oh my God, I'm so happy for you." In fact, I feel like I remember that day.
About the fact that you're leaving.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, yeah, thank God you're gone. But no, we weren't even on the same team at that point. It was just, I heard where you were going, and I was just so excited from the point of view that it just seemed like, wow, good for you. And I was just happy for you to be making a decision, and you wouldn't have done that if you didn't want to do it, right? So it was just all things came together, and so it has to have been the last time. I mean, we text every once in a while, not quite enough, but once in a while, and we have our short chats in that space. But it really has probably been a good 2 years since we've caught up, and so
fully, yeah, absolutely,
yeah. I've really enjoyed this, and so thank you very much.
It actually has been really fun.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Isn't it a good thing?
Well, I love talking about myself, and that's what this interview was about. It was all about me.
Yeah, it's all about your favorite subject.
I don't know.
Mr. Hot Shit himself.
I can talk for hours about me. Like, oh my God.
Quickly. It has been. We started at about 7 and it's 9:06. So that's really good. Okay. I'm gonna stop recording.
Yep.
And thank you very much. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye now.
So that was Mark. Really, what a pleasure, right? I hope that you come along to join for the studying, or if not, I just hope you come back for one more interview after this, and we will see you very soon. Please remember to subscribe. Please remember to share with your friends, and I hope to see you at the next one. Thank you.